The John Marsh Historic Trust and the California Department of Parks and Recreation made an inspection of the emergency repairs to the old John Marsh stone house. This video is the record of their visit.
To go through some self-introductions and then visit the house and talk about it a bit, and then of course we're going to reconvene at Patty's house for our board meeting. So once again, thank all of you for being here. This is kind of a show and tell of, I think, a wonderful accomplishment, a joint effort between our John Marsh Trust, State Park, and ARG, Jill Johnson of ARG, it was about the time that Marianne and I created a deal that we needed to deal with it, and the best way to do it was for the trust, state parks to work together. So we matched funds. Brian, Marianne, and others got a stewardship grant. We funded the architectural engineering. Is what this wall looked like, and at that time, stone was completely out of here. These were covered with plywood, and cracks went all the way up. And they brought cranes in. They pulled the stones out to determine which ones were unstable and which ones not. They opened up, what, maybe a quarter or so of this wall, and then carefully replaced them. Repointing, that is the mortar work of the brick as well as the stone. A lot of research and trial and effort went into actually validating the mixture of the moisture. Local sand was used, I think, and both the color, because this is permanent fix now. This will stay here. And so it's very important that it be done right. So what you're looking at was a wall that was really in danger. I don't think it's too much of an exaggeration to suggest that had we waited much longer, it could have resulted in what we were going to see on the south side, a complete collapse. Because once things begin rotating and falling out at this level, there's not much to support the entire wall. So this is the famous emergency north wall.
It was really quite a good bricklayer. So it was an interesting combination of men who've kind of seen it all, done it all, and then a woman mason they're not very common in the trades, but she was so good, not only in bricklaying and her skills, but she rides horses, and she is a real kind of outdoor person, and she got along really well with the rancher, so that was a bonus.
And she and her partner.
We were really lucky to work with a wonderful engineer from Southern California who I had worked with in the past on buildings like this. And we were able to rebuild portions of the bottom of the wall while keeping all this masonry intact above. And so all of this was taken out. This was all gone, which is kind of mind-boggling in a way, because all of the masonry above was just left in place.
Things to remind you that this house, it beautifully originally had a veranda in it, and the veranda was connected into the house with those little orange dots that you see there. The fact that those were holes were a problem for the house, because rainwater was getting into those holes just as it was getting into the damaged roof and soaking the sandstone brick. And that was what was really the cause of the disintegration of the house. To restore the veranda as well, you know precisely where the openings were, and get back into those openings. You see evidence now of some of the tie rods that have gone through, and I think you can see the difference between where they worked originally. All the lighter work mortar has been recent repair work. A lot of it not necessarily structural, as it was around the corner that we just talked about, but simply to make
A little bit of uneven settlement has gone on, and when you have that, difficult things happen. But these braces were put on, goodness, by state parks, like these corner braces here, back in the late 70s, I believe.
Yeah. With the exception of this brace right here, this brace is the first thing that my first volunteer and I did, because this wall had bulges in it about like that. And so we put that brace in to keep this corner from collapsing like around the corner here. So that's, we also then took off a lot of the old roof, but put the cheapest and the lightest weight stuff that we could get, the corrugated tin roof on. Because again, moisture and water are the biggest enemies of this house.
Yeah.
And this house, the roof was just leaking like mad. You can see how the dormers come down, and just imagine how much rainwater was coming down and soaking right in between the dormer and the tower and between the two dormers. So to replace the roof with this was the best thing we could do, and I can't thank enough volunteers. We're doing a lot of repointing, and we were asked to come up with more money, which we were very pleased to do. In fact, glad that we were asked.
Wall shows the shape it's in. Here's the stone preserved from the south wall. It's marked and ready to be used to restore it.
Goodness, isn't this the greatest emergency? If you're going to do urgent work, why don't you just come and work on the south wall? I'm not so sure that I can give everyone the best possible answer to that, but this wall has been gone for probably 15 or 20 years. But simply even raking dirt out from under that scaffolding creates a problem. The engineer has determined that he doesn't think another year's of weather will create that much more of a problem. But try to demonstrate to you how a disintegration of a building like this can be very, very deceptive. When we were doing the roof work, and this goes back to the early 90s, and this looks like a fresh print, but this was made back in the early 90s. This wall right here looked about like this. We were here one weekend, we came back the next week after we put up the scaffold, and that's what had happened. This whole section had fallen out. And of course today, again, Bill Watson's photographs are much better than mine. This is what you see. From one weekend to the next, we could not tell from this that there was any danger. And then this.
Right.
I just want to try to make the point that it's very uncertain. That's the reason we have large contingencies. That's the reason it costs a lot to do this kind of work. Until you really get into it, you don't know the conditions. We don't really know the condition of the sandstone foundation. We don't know what it's going to be like that when we excavate it. So the uncertainties are just huge. So this is the famous west wall repair that we did in the last phase of the so-called emergency work. I'll just point out for some of you that don't remember or never knew. See that the veranda came all the way around here to about this point over here. And the early archaeologists, and Jill, I'm assuming that you agree, curious to me to know that there was an exterior stairway that came down, small balcony on the tower on the front side. That hasn't been there for many, many years. The wooden building here is probably the late 1800s. I'm not sure we know exactly the date of it, but it is this structure is just
When we did the research on making this a museum, the National Museum Association from Washington, D.C. gave us a lot of specifications, and they recommended that that building would house all the facilities for air conditioning and humidity controls, so nothing would go in the original building. It would be outside here, but that building would be restored, and so the house would be fixed up for a museum atmosphere.
Right around World War I. And so I'm thinking 1819, 1920 at the latest.
So if we found it there. And she actually lived in what was the bunkhouse. That's where she grew up.